The next is Professor Barry Bloom, who has a reputation all over the world for his work in the field of public health. What does it mean, public health? After all, health is so individual. If I hurt, do you know? Do you feel my pain? He does. He does because he's a physician, he does because he's a teacher, he does because he's a human being. And what he realizes, and what all of you who work in the field of public health, because that's what you are doing in the industry, is to bring hope to patients who need hope. There is a marvelous legend about King Solomon, who was supposed to have been the wisest of all men, although we also think we know that he had 1,000 wives. Where was his wisdom? But we are told that whenever he was sad, he had a ring made, a very special ring with special powers. And whenever he was sad, he would simply put on the ring on his finger, and the sadness was gone. When he was very happy, he removed the ring, and then he was sad. And I asked myself the question, why was he said to be so wise? Why should a wise man want to be sad? That he wanted to be happy, good, it's normal. But why the wish to be sad? And the answer really is, a sad person has only one anchor, and that is called hope. Happy people think they don't need hope. Sad people do. And when a patient is sad, nothing can measure his or her sadness. And of course, here comes the doctor, and here comes your industry, thinking of that moment of sadness. After all, there is a mantra which I like to repeat always. Life is not made of years, but of moments. There are good moments, lofty moments, glorious moments. Others are less glorious, despairing. And it's in your hands to have that patient wear the ring. Call it medication, call it surgery, call it intervention, so that that person should be open to hope. And that's why we honor tonight Barry Bloom, for he has given hope to multitudes in your name. Thank you. Barry Bloom.
I'm enormously grateful to Dr. Weissman and the very distinguished advisory committee for the Prix Galien, and I'm deeply touched by the inspirational words of Elie Wiesel, who has raised the uniqueness of human dignity in every part of the world, for every person in the world, to a level that is inspirational for all of us. I'm particularly appreciative to be able to receive this and share it with my long-term friend and colleague, Jeff Sachs, who has really done so much to make the case to the whole world for the poorest people in the world. I think Jeff and I would share the view of the historian Arnold Toynbee, who wrote that our age is the first since the dawn of history in which mankind dared to believe that it was practical to make the benefits of civilization available to the whole of the human race. I began my scientific career as far away as imaginable from the third world, trying to understand very fundamental mechanisms of cell-mediated immune responses that up until that time was a black box that could only be studied by putting cells into whole animals. And with some in vitro techniques that had been developed, we were able to establish some simple things, namely that lymphocytes had specificity for antigen, and they told other cells what to do as perfect bureaucrats, and they did so by producing molecules which we now know as cytokines. And there started as one, and now there are over hundreds of cytokines that control communication and signaling between the immune system and cells of the body. For whatever reason, in 1971, someone at the World Health Organization believed that these findings might have relevance to the most backward, least understood infectious disease of the time, from biblical days to the time, which was leprosy, about which I knew nothing. But because there weren't any real experts in science that knew anything much about leprosy, they sent me off to a very small meeting in India, which changed my life and my career. And that meeting made it clear to me that there was a huge need for the cutting-edge tools of science to be addressing the neglected diseases of people in poor countries. And reciprocally, there was an enormous amount that we could learn from those diseases about the immune system and how it functioned. TB is a lung disease. I've worked on it for 30 years. It's very hard to study. Leprosy is a skin disease. Much of what we know about how to resist TB derives from the study of that meeting and leprosy. The outcome of that meeting led to something else, the development of the first research program called the Tropical Disease Research Program in the World Health Organization to develop new tools for the neglected diseases of the poorest countries. I've been privileged to work with WHO for over 40 years, and I think my role has been to bring the brightest people that I knew in science to become engaged with WHO and think about using their expertise to deal with problems of the poorest countries. In the course of my career, the field of global health has changed profoundly. To give you some numbers, in 1900, life expectancy in the United States was 47. In the United Kingdom, it was 35, and in India, it was 25 years. Currently, life expectancy in the US is about 78. In England, it's close to 80. And in India, it's 63 years. Much of that is due to discoveries made in basic sciences, but also much of that is due to their development by the pharmaceutical and vaccine industries that have made those discoveries in a laboratory meaningful to vast numbers of people around the world. Who could have imagined 5 or 10 years ago that, if not the most, one of the most widely used drugs in the world besides aspirin is a malaria drug, Coartem, made by Novartis? It would have been inconceivable. On the other hand, we still have no vaccines against AIDS, TB, malaria, or a single human parasitic disease. And we're facing the emergence of drug-resistant TB and malaria and pneumococcal and many other infectious diseases. So this is a continuing struggle, and there remain huge scientific challenges. Albert Einstein was once asked what he thought was the most important discovery in mathematics. His instantaneous response was compound interest. Perhaps the most rewarding experience of my career was in 1971. I was sent out by WHO to teach the first course in immunology in India. We had 28 students from all over the country. In 1996, the International Congress of Immunology was held in New Delhi for the first time. There were 3,000 registered Indian immunologists. There is no compound interest like education, and there is no product of the United States in greater need or demand in developing countries than access to education, science, and technology. This evening has brought together an extraordinary group of thinkers and leaders who've contributed a great deal to making this a healthier world. I can't resist ending my comments with the words of someone who served greatly this wonderful museum for almost 25 years, Margaret Mead. And what she said is, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. Your continuing thought and commitment remain vital to all those people on the planet who are not yet able to share in the benefits of modern civilization. Thank you very much. Thank you, Reverend.